going inside the issues of our community. This is Local 12 Newsmakers.
Some said our campaign was over after Iowa, but then we won New Hampshire. Then we had big victories on Super Tuesday and in Ohio and Texas and Pennsylvania. And of course, we came from behind to win in Indiana. So this race isn't over yet.
On Tuesday night, after Senator Hillary Clinton won a commanding victory in West Virginia by 67 to 26%, she laid out her case for why she could still become the nominee of the Democratic Party. But in a turn of events typical of this year's Democratic primary race, less than 24 hours later, Barack Obama countered by gaining the endorsement of John Edwards. On Tuesday, Kentucky voters weigh in. Is there still time for their votes to make a difference? Good morning and welcome to Local 12 Newsmakers. In a year when everyone, including the candidates and their strategists, believed that the Democratic primary contest was front-loaded and would be over by Super Tuesday on February the 5th, no one thought that in mid-May the campaigns and pundits would take more than a passing notice of Kentucky voters. But on Tuesday, what Kentucky voters think counts. Just how much depends on your perspective. Some data. Although different sources calculate the delegates somewhat differently, it appears Barack Obama has about 1,900 delegates and needs another 126 to secure a win, while Clinton has about 1,716 delegates and needs 310 more to win. Kentucky has 60 delegates, 52 of which will be pledged based on the results of the Tuesday primary. 8 are so-called superdelegates. I am joined first this morning by one of those 8 superdelegates, Nathan Smith. Mr. Smith is the vice chair of the Kentucky Democratic Party and is a partner in SSK Communities, a manufactured housing company. Nathan, welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You have made it very clear that you're uncommitted. And despite all of us press people trying to prod you to tell us what you really think, you've remained in that position. Is there a clock ticking in your mind about when you need to make a decision?
Well, you know, Tuesday obviously is when Kentucky votes. And I'm kind of planning on, after the primary in Kentucky on Tuesday, I'm going to look at how Kentucky votes and talk with some other folks, and then we'll probably then start formulating a decision. But my understanding is that there may be a situation where the Democrats come together earlier. There's been the Tennessee governor has suggested maybe we come together in June sometime, the superdelegates, and you kind of cast your vote. Governor Howard Dean, who's the chairman of the Democrat National Committee, he suggested some other things. So, you know, we have 5 states left. Kentucky and Oregon on Tuesday. Then we go on to Puerto Rico, Montana, and South Dakota. And this will be wrapped up a little bit right after Memorial Day.
So since you're a superdelegate, you're not so much looking at how your part of Kentucky votes, but how the entire state votes?
Well, I think I probably will take in account how my part of Kentucky votes, how the state of Kentucky votes, and I will take into account who's the best choice for the fall, who I think is most likely to win states that are important to us to beat John McCain.
Now, we're airing on Sunday morning here. Mm-hmm. We're talking on Friday, and things can change, so I want to be careful about that. But on Sunday night at your house, my understanding is there's a little fundraiser, and Senator Clinton's going to be there. Is that the understanding?
That is correct. My wife has been a supporter of Senator Clinton for years, and a huge Democrat, and I think probably anybody who knows our family knows that. And so once asked by the senator if we would host an event later in the year, my wife obviously agreed to it very quickly, and I would support my wife because this is a lady. We have 4 children and under 7, so it's a busy house, and so she agrees to let me be involved in politics. So I would obviously agree to anything that she would like.
So we've talked about how the influence of Kentucky and this part of. What about inside the house? Can you be uncommitted inside that? I mean, let's be real about this.
Yes. Well, you know, that is, several people have asked that question, and let me say this. I can say one thing. Senator Clinton has a huge lobbying organization in the Smith household.
I see. So there is some pressure there.
There is some pressure, I will be honest.
Realistically and seriously, given where we are in this primary contest, how important is it for the Democratic Party to bring this to some sort of conclusion so that these two candidates don't beat up each other so much that whoever comes out on the other end, it's a cheapened nomination?
Well, this is how I kind of describe that. Originally, if we would have only went as a normal primary, as we all know, that ends usually February, early March at the latest, I would have thought at that point ending it early would be an okay idea. But the situation is now is that we have had 45 states vote. People are energized, they're energetic, they want to cast their vote. And at this point, I believe that as a Democratic Party, to cut short those people from getting to cast their vote is not a good idea for the party. And you know, there's pundits and CNN and MSNBC all say, well, they need to end it. I disagree with them. I think people need to have their opportunity. You know, Kentucky, Oregon, Montana, South Dakota, Puerto Rico, and
Guam.
And Guam. No, Guam's already done. So we're
okay.
Oregon, Kentucky, Montana, South Dakota, and Puerto Rico. We're so close. We're within 2 weeks at the end of it. We need to go ahead and let all these folks vote and let them get their say in it.
Are you worried, though, that in the contest, let's face it, you get to this point, both candidates, both people, groups of people around them, they want to win. I mean, that's what this is about. You begin to say things, and that maybe even John McCain can't say. And this has been raised around the issue of some of the things that Senator Clinton has said about her base is hardworking whites, which by implication almost, it sounds racial, it sounds a little bit like a slam. Are there issues here that, depending on how somebody says them, that one of the other Democratic candidates is doing the work of the Republican Party?
I don't think so. You know, what is going to happen in this campaign is the Democrats are going to come together at the end, and whoever our candidate is, and that candidate will obviously pick a vice president candidate, and our party will rally around that person because the Democrat Party will pick the best person to run and to be president of the United States, and whoever that person may it be Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama. They will obviously be a better choice than John McCain because we don't need any more 4 more years of George Bush. And so, you know, I think the Democrats will rally around. You can ask, even in the exit polls, they're saying, you know, I may be for her or I may be for him, but I'll vote for the other one no matter which way it goes in the fall.
How important was it that Barack Obama got the endorsement of John Edwards this week? I mean, John Edwards' base is certainly that working class, traditional base of the Democratic Party, which Clinton has been claiming and working on and trying to build on. How important is it that Edwards came over and came out for Barack Obama?
Well,
and how important is it to you as a superdelegate?
Well, it has no effect on me.
Okay.
And because, you know, endorsements, then you can go through that she has her endorsements, he has his endorsements. Right. You know, probably the biggest thing is that he had so many delegates. He had 14, which obviously we're down to just a handful now, and that becomes more important. So I think that's maybe the most important part of it. But, you know, one of the things that I've continued to say is superdelegates, the ones who have made their mind up either side at this point, can switch the next day. I mean, there is no...
We've seen some of that.
We've seen some of that, and you may see some switch back and forth because the fact is she's going to kind of, when it's all done, she's going to try to make her case that she can win these swing states. He's going to be making his case that he can win these swing states, and he's bringing these folks in. So that, so I think both of them will be making their case to each other. You know, John Edwards, you know, he was a vice president candidate before. I respect his opinion as well as I respect other people's opinion, and but it had no sway on me whatsoever.
Given the numbers that I sort of lay out at the beginning, and because people switch and because there's some question about certain delegates, those are rounded numbers, or those are estimates, good estimates. What would it take? But the reality is the short time that we have, 5 states left. What would it take for Barack Obama to lose this nomination? Wouldn't it take a major collapse, a scandal almost, for him to lose at this point?
I think it would be difficult for him to lose, but not impossible. I think the situation you have is we have 5 more states. Obviously, if she was to continue with the run that she had on Tuesday night, that would probably change it. I don't think it's possible, but it is.
But even there, which in West Virginia was such a huge victory, she only gained a net gain of only about 12 delegates.
Well, yes, and that's the difference.
It just isn't much.
You know, what we're going to see here is all the states are going to end up playing it out. And then it's going to come down to superdelegates for him or her. Mm-hmm. So, you know, we can talk about what the percentage is through the states going on, but as I've said to everyone, the superdelegates at the end are going to have to make this decision. And I do think it'll be difficult, but I think what may be happening is there may be some situations where they are so close. There may be a situation here where there has to be some talk about who's running with who, and and everybody says, would he ever pick her? Will she? I don't know that, but this is a situation where this isn't a blowout by any means. Right. I mean, we're down to worrying about Puerto Rico, and we're worried about right. 10 delegates or whatever it is in Montana.
I got one more question. What would it take for the Democratic candidate, no matter who it is, to win Kentucky this fall?
Well, I think what it's going to take in Kentucky to win Kentucky is that our candidate is going to most likely come to Kentucky, and we're going to talk about what working folks in rural America care about. And they're worried about their jobs, they're worried about the economy, they're worried about the war, and it continues to go on and on and on. And those are issues that they worry about in rural America. They're not worried about, who's been in D.C. the longest. I mean, I don't know that, John McCain would win that battle. There's no doubt. He's been there for a century, and it feels like. And so we'll let him continue to hopefully stay in the Senate, and we'll have one of our U.S. senators will become President of the United States.
Well, thank you for being here this morning. Have an interesting party tonight and a discussion with your wife, and we'll see what happens on Tuesday.
Great.
Okay. Stay tuned after the break. The Republican candidates in one of the most contested local races in northern Kentucky. Welcome back. Aside from the Democratic presidential race, thousands of local candidates across the Commonwealth of Kentucky are running in primaries for the right to contest the fall general elections. That could be for judgeships, commission seats, state legislative seats. One of the most hotly contested races this Tuesday is in the Kentucky 63rd House District, which covers much of northern part of Kenton County, including Villa Hills, Fort Mitchell, Fort Wright, down to Edgewood. I am joined now by the two Republican candidates for that seat. Alecia Webb-Edgington is an incumbent, having won the seat in a special election in January of this year after John Drought became Kentucky's education commissioner. Ms. Webb-Edgington is retired from the Kentucky State Police Force and worked for the Kentucky Office of Homeland Security. Will Terwort is employed in the Kenton County clerk's race and is making his first run for political office. Welcome to Newsmakers.
Thank you.
Now, both of you are relatively new to electoral politics, so let me just begin. Alecia, if you could begin by talking about not just your background, but how you think your background sets you up to be a good elected official.
Well, thank you, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today. Actually, I think that my 20 years in public service, I spent my entire career in the public safety arena as a Kentucky State Trooper and as the Homeland Security Director for the Commonwealth of Kentucky under the guidance of Governor Ernie Fletcher. And my entire life has been in public safety and in public service, and I think that this is just the natural progression for the next chapter in my life, is to continue my public service to the community and to the fine folks of the 63rd District.
How long ago did you imagine that you might run for elected political office?
Last November.
Okay.
There was discussions.
So this was not something that you've been dreaming about for a long time?
No, sir.
Okay.
I've had the opportunity, obviously, to be in the arena and be around the arena after my days of Homeland Security. In the Kentucky State Police, we are prohibited by the Kentucky Revised Statutes, Chapter 16, to participate in any partisan politics.
Okay.
And so it's just been a progression since November of last year.
Okay. Will, how about you? What about your background and what sets you up to be an elected public official?
Well, growing up in this community, I have a good sense of what the values are and the principles and more important, the political philosophy of this district is. I attended Dixie Heights, University of Kentucky, and I have the experience because of my time at University of Kentucky. While at UK, in the summertime, I got to intern for State Senator Dick Roding for a whole session in the General Assembly. I also got to work for U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell in his Washington, D.C. office, and U.S. Congressman now, U.S. Senator Jim Bunning. And I think public service is something that should always be held in a high regard. And I think my experience on top of my legal education and more important, my ideas and my philosophy really will represent this district well. And I have a family of strong history of strong public service. My great-grandfather, Ori Ware, served in Congress. My uncle, Charlie Summey, was a 30-year county commissioner. And I think when you evaluate the two candidates, I think my community roots and my conservative philosophy will be the reason that I'll be successful on Tuesday.
Implied in that response by Will is that somehow your community roots aren't as deep or deep enough for this district. Alecia, do you want to say anything about that?
Well, I've complimented my opponent on a number of occasions. They had the good fortune to be born in the district for which I have chosen to raise my family. And as we all know, that when we choose to raise our family in an area, it's critical that we select that because we know that I just have one child, but I wanted that area. She attends St. Agnes School, and it's a wonderful community. But according to the standards of my opponent, then the fine folks, some of the great Republicans that have historically served the Commonwealth of Kentucky, Senator Mitch McConnell and Congressman Jeff Davis, Clyde Middleton or Dick Murgatroyd would not be in positions to have held positions in leadership according to his standards. I've been in the community for 18 years. I've fought crime in Covington. I worked the roads on 75. I worked child abuse investigations in the 10-county region to northern Kentucky. And so my roots are very deep, and I'm very, very proud of the fact that I chose this community to live in with my husband.
Will, do you have any response to that? I mean, because this has been one of these sort of personal biographical issues that have been in this campaign.
I think if you take my experience, my local community roots, and my deep conservative philosophy, I think it makes me the best candidate to serve the Republicans, and more important, the people of the 63rd State House.
Let's talk a little bit about, both of you are, I think would describe yourselves as conservatives. You're Republicans, but conservative Republicans. On some issues, one of the problems that Kentucky and almost every state faces at the moment is some real needs on infrastructure, on schools and funding for those sorts of basic needs in this community and in the state. Yet economically, revenues are declining because we're in an economic downturn or recession, depending on how it ultimately gets defined. Where do you stand on the question of raising taxes in order to increase the revenues in order to make the investments that Kentucky needs to move forward, especially in these two areas of infrastructure and education? Alecia? Well,
I have a voting record clearly that indicates that I'm against raising taxes. We have to keep the money in the pockets of our citizens in the Commonwealth. That generates growth. And what we need to do is continue to market the Commonwealth of Kentucky. One of the greatest things that we have, Nan, is the ability for our coal industry is our cheap electricity here. And we have the ability to market our state and allow for the economic development for us to reach 2015. And
given the economic crunch of the time, are you then willing and are prepared to make the cuts that will be necessary to continue to balance the budget?
We need to continue with putting more money in the pockets of the citizens of the Commonwealth. And I do think that what we need to do is we need to trust our instincts in that we continue with tax credits to allow more money to be generated out in the market.
Will, what about this on taxes?
Well, I think I'm 100% against ever raising taxes. I think in Kentucky we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem. We have to watch the pocketbook of the Kentucky families, so they're getting the best bang for their buck, and more important, most efficient government. We need to make state government more efficient.
Are there places in the Kentucky budget that need more funding? And if so, if you're against increased taxes and we're in an economic downturn, what cuts would you make? What waste do you see, and where would you cut it, and where would you put it?
I think there's way too much bureaucracy and overhead in Frankfurt. I think we need to streamline the state government and find
concretely. Every politician says that. What concrete, is there a department that you would cut?
I think the education department could be scaled back. I think we need to shift money more to local school districts and reduce the staffing in the state education department. I think the transportation cabinet could be more efficient. I just think there's a lot of, I think Kentucky needs to be evaluated, each department needs to be evaluated a very effective way so it's more efficient for the taxpayers.
Very specifically, what about increasing the tax on cigarettes? There was a recent poll by the Lexington Herald Leader that found actually a fairly broad support for raising the taxes. Kentucky has a very low tax on cigarettes compared to the other states, very high smoking rate. Your district, a urbanized district, a metropolitan district, I think the trends are a little bit different. You're not in a rural district. Where do you stand on the cigarette tax?
Well, personally, I do not smoke, but I'm against raising the cigarette tax.
Because you're against raising any tax?
I think people are taxed. Like the citizens of Kentucky are already taxed enough.
Okay, Alecia, what about specifically on the cigarette tax?
I am not for raising any taxes right
Any
now,
tax.
and the reality of that is because we have to keep money in the pockets of the citizens of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, and I am not convinced that we have streamlined government enough in the executive branch.
What specific things would you streamline?
Well, let me give you an example. I've sponsored a study during the interim session with Representative Tanya Pullen to look at 911 centers across the Commonwealth. We currently have in excess of 97 public safety answering points across the Commonwealth. I think that we could look at streamlining those 911 centers, moving that money towards public safety in an effort to offset the higher gasoline that local law enforcement and county law enforcement and state police are currently expending. Other ways that we need to look at is during the session there was an increase at the Governor's Office for Local Development, some 19 additional people added in 1 week. Those are the kinds of things that we have to look at. We need to do what's happened in private industry to look at management solutions to be more streamlined in government to cut non-essential personnel.
What about the question, let's start with Alecia, what about the question of gambling, casino gambling in Kentucky as a way of generating money? Both Ohio and Kentucky face the problem of Indiana having casino gambling, generating quite a bit of funds for the state and local municipalities. Where do you stand on the gambling issue?
I said during the special election, philosophically, I am opposed to casino gambling. However, I have no issue with allowing the people of the 63rd District and the people of the Commonwealth to vote on that issue. I went to the governor and asked, there was 12 subcategories in his initial amendment, and I asked for him to consider a 13th subcategory to involve mega projects, to allow us to, if the amendment passed and we had casino gambling in Northern Kentucky, to allow us to maintain that $200 million in the Northern Kentucky area to look at mega projects for the replacement of infrastructure such as the Brent Spence Bridge.
Okay. Will, what about casino gambling?
I personally do not gamble, but I'm willing to let my voters in my district vote on whether or not they want casino gambling. But I strongly support a local option, that local either city or county have an option to vote on it, because if it's going to be in that community, I think they ought to have the voters ought to have a say.
Okay, so there, in effect, you would set it up so that there would be a double chance. There would be a statewide that would permit it, but then a local option to either opt in or opt out. Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. You raised the question of the Brent Spence Bridge. One of the issues out there, and we only have about a minute left, so where do you stand on the possibility of a toll on a new bridge in order to raise the local funds that will be necessary for the federal match?
I'm 100% against any tolls, any studying of tolls, and any private-public partnerships. It's a federal highway. It's a highway that goes through many states. It's a federal government has an obligation.
The reality
to pay
is
for
local units have always had to contribute to the building of interstates, though.
It's a federal bridge. The federal government needs to prioritize how the money's spent. They'll find the money.
Where do you stand on tolls?
I'm vehemently against tolls. I have a record of voting against tolls, House Bill 689, and I continue to hold firm to that. We have 70,000 commercial vehicles a day crossing that bridge, and it is critical that the federal government continue towards the solution to pay for that bridge.
Okay. Thank you very much for being here. We'll be watching on Tuesday to see how this turns out, and good luck to both of you in this election. Okay. The election this Tuesday in Kentucky is a closed primary. Only declared members of the party can vote in the primary, whether you're a Republican or a delegate. Polls open at 6 a.m., close at 6 p.m. It's important to take an ID with you just in case. Thank you for making Newsmakers part of your Sunday morning. Join us again next week to meet the women and the men shaping our community for the future. Have a good week.